Yeah, so at Autodesk we've been building 3D design applications for professional engineers in all different vertical markets for years, and for 30 years really. And what we started about 5 years ago was we really saw this manufacturing disruption happening, this new industrial revolution. And we felt like for us to really understand it, we needed to get in and start working with the makers and people, the DIY, people that were kind of, I would say, grassroots disruption that's happening. Because what's happening is the tools are becoming available and accessible to a much wider group of people. With 3D printing, digital fabrication, laser cutters, digital design, you could just see that the kinds of things that individuals and small teams could build actually rival, and in some ways can even disrupt some of the more traditional, larger corporations building products. And so we felt like to really, if this was a coming revolution in the design and manufacturing space, we wanted to play in that area. So what we decided was we were going to start taking our professional tools and the technology behind them and repurposing them for consumers. So we built out a whole portfolio of 3D modeling, design applications, drawing, painting, sketching, on an iPad, and browser-based apps, and really using mobile, social, community, and kind of a lot of the new technology, cloud-based computing, and kind of experimenting, throwing some products out there and seeing what would resonate. So we built a tool called 123D Design, 123D Make, Tinkercad, Mesh Mixer. These are all tools that we've built really with an end user who's not a professional engineer in mind. They're free tools, the user interfaces are much simpler and makes it much more accessible to a non-professional, whether it's a student, a hobbyist, somebody who's just passionate about 3D or wants to learn about 3D. So we've been doing that now for about 4 or 5 years, and the results have been pretty outstanding. So what's happened with this whole portfolio of applications is that we've actually been able to see a huge amount of users building things in 3D that they hadn't before. I mean, in total, across all the consumer products, in 5 years, we've got something like 240 million users. And in the professional space with AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, Fusion, some of these professional tools, it's taken us 30 years to get to about 17 million, which is still a healthy number. We have a big chunk of the professional engineering space. But what we've seen is that there's an appetite for 3D modeling tools and 3D design, and tools like 123D Catch, where you can take your smartphone, take pictures of an object, upload it to the cloud, and have it actually produce a 3D model that you can then download and actually 3D print. So that's a really interesting workflow where you don't have to have a really complex design scenario in order to produce something that's 3D printable. So talking about Spark. So Spark is an open software platform. It's free, basically, that goes end to end. And the goal there is to really enable more innovation in the 3D printing world. So we've started kind of because of our roots in the consumer group with consumers. We had been working with 3D printing companies and service bureaus for a long time, both with consumer desktop printers and with more professional printers that these service bureaus use. And what we were doing is make it easy for people to take their 3D models and then have them printed off-site and mailed to them through a Shapeways or Sculpteo or iMaterialize, one of these service bureaus, but also to be able to just print something locally on a desktop printer, like a MakerBot or Ultimaker, Type A, PrinterBot, these kind of companies. And what we found is that the workflow really is broken, basically. It's not easy for somebody to take a 3D model and get it to print reliably on a printer. And so we decided that we really needed to help really provide some serious software that could be in the background, maybe running in the cloud, to take the model through the steps required to really make it a reliable, successful, accurate, predictable print. Things like checking the geometry and analyzing or repairing the geometry, or building support material that was required for a printer, or slicing the printer and generating the G-code or the image stack that needs to go to the printer to drive it reliably. And so we've been doing this, and we've decided about a year ago we actually made the decision. We announced Spark as an open 3D printing platform. The day that we announced it, it was actually the largest media day that Autodesk has ever seen in its 30-year history, which just tells you how important 3D printing and how well it's resonated and how much interest there is. Then about a few months later, we announced the Spark investment fund, where we earmarked $100 million to invest in companies that were really being innovative in the 3D printing space, whether that's a hardware manufacturer creating a new type of printer, a software company developing a new algorithm for any of the pipeline, or for analysis or simulation or modeling, service bureaus, materials. I think a lot of the innovation in 3D printing is yet to come. I really think it's early days. And I think a lot of that innovation has to come from the materials side. New processes and a wider range of materials so that 3D printing can be used in a lot more applications. So, you know, the uptake on that's been fantastic. Our first actual investment was done a few weeks ago. We announced Carbon 3D, which is a really exciting process. Pardon me? Oh, we have a whole bunch in the pipeline, nothing I can really announce that I could announce today. But we're very close. Okay. But yeah, it's been amazing. We've had 750 applications of companies that, you know, startup companies primarily that are looking for, you know, seed money or first round, second round financing. And it's great because it just makes it easy for us, you know, to find the players and it's kind of the up and coming technologies and companies that are really going to be affecting the industry, and allows us to kind of start to partner with them early days, and so that we can do something really, really great together. Here we're trying to connect the dots, really create this ecosystem and facilitate the workflows from hardware to software to materials to the printer, you know, in whatever combination it has to be. You know, whether it's a scanner, you know, creating a model that then goes into software for modifying or analyzing the model, and then creating the printing, or hooking up new materials to a printer. I mean, we created, along with Spark, when we announced the open software, we announced that we were building a 3D printer. So then we started shipping, you know, we built the printer. So the Ember printer has been very successful. It's a high precision printer, targeted a very focused market. It's an SLA printer, very different from a lot of the desktop FDM printers, because we felt like there's a lot of innovation and experimentation in FDM. SLA was very narrow. There's a few companies that were doing SLA printing, but we feel like it has a lot of legs, a lot of opportunities to invent new materials and to invent new processes, to speed up the process, like Carbon 3D, very high resolution, and can produce some very high quality parts, where the structural integrity of the part is such that it can actually be applied to the finished product, whether it's a, you know, electric motorcycle or bike or what have you, or there's all kinds of applications in a number of industries. But you know, you take a part like today, a part coming off of Carbon 3D has almost isotropic material properties, where it has strength in all directions. But the materials aren't such that you could actually use it, you know, for medical purposes today, at least not inside the body. I mean, they have a lot of really interesting things they can do, but it's material science that's going to really open up all these other applications, you know, to where you know, you can get FDA approved materials, and you know, for implants and things like that. Today it's kind of limited to stainless and mainly titanium for like implants and stuff. But it's really exciting to see all the innovation, and you know, that's really what we're up to, is really trying to spur that innovation, connect the dots, like you say, create an ecosystem where it's not closed. I mean, you know, you look at the first 30 years of 3D printing, and there was a handful of companies that were taking a kind of a end-to-end, you know, proprietary solution, where you buy the materials from them, you use their software, you use their hardware, and they got us to where we are in the industry. But I think to really leap to the next level, we really need to have more of an open. So, you know, that's what Spark is all about, open, but there's a lot of other things going on in terms of partnering, like the 3MF initiative, which is another really good thing we just announced with at the Microsoft Build conference about 3 weeks ago, that two things really, that we're going to be integrating Spark into Windows 10, so that the developers working on Windows will have you know, a rich set of APIs to hook up to printers and drive the 3D printing process from an application that runs on Windows, you know, in the Windows App Store, that kind of thing. And then on top of that, as part of our working with Microsoft, we got involved in the 3MF consortium. So there were 7 companies, some big players in the 3D printing industry, HP, SLM Systems, Shapeways is another one, NetFab, Microsoft. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but you know, the companies in that consortium are really dedicated to investing time and resources into making a next generation file format that will really drive a richer communication between the apps and the hardware. So that's really exciting to see the kind of collaboration. I mean, you know, I think you know, there's been a real switch in attitudes in the hardware and software business to go for a more open approach. And so you see things like Android, or Linux, or like with Drupal and Acquia and Drupal, companies can really be successful, have a way to monetize off of by adding additional value add, proprietary software, but that works with the open source. So you have open source to gain adoption, to get communication, compatibility, interoperability, and then people can go build their extra value, whether it's more sophistication or more completeness or porting to multiple multiple platforms, or just different ways that company can add. But you get that connectiveness and that initial sort of adoption and moving forward, and the innovation through the open source. And then companies can come in and bring in their hardware, their software, their services to build on top of that basic pipeline. So it's a really interesting way to move the industry forward. We talked about the consumer products, right? And how we've got really large adoption. But 3D printing, we really think that 3D printing in the next decade or so, the real value is really still in the industrial space. But we need to open it up and we need to make it much easier for professionals. I mean, I've been building professional software for 25 years. I'm a CNC machinist initially, manufacturing engineer, and built CAM systems and modeling tools for professionals. And I went into this consumer space because it was a very interesting new thing to do. But I can see where the tools really are valuable in the professional space, even more than in the consumer space. And so at Autodesk, we've got a whole suite of professional tools, from tools for architects and engineering construction to people making things for movies, whether it's animation and the assets that are used for movies and video games and all the merchandising that comes around that, or then the whole suite of manufacturing, analysis, simulation, 3D modeling and design. I think the real value right now for Autodesk and a number of companies in the 3D printing ecosystem is really in the industrial and the professional uses. I think the consumer use is really interesting, and it makes a lot of capability accessible to a much broader range of people. But what has to happen for 3D printing to really deliver on the promise is we need to get to the point where we're designing parts and products that really leverage the full potential of a 3D printer. And we're not there yet. I mean, this is the first time in my 30-year career in manufacturing and in software where the manufacturing capacity and the tools have surpassed what the designs can produce. When you look at multi-materials and being able to have high precision and put different materials at any position within the print bed of a part, like you look at the voxel of a space of a part, and to be able to put hard rubber and hard plastic and even like metals and changing the color and doing that as a gradient across the part. I mean, these are the possibilities are really endless, and there aren't design tools today that can do that. In fact, there aren't designers that can really even conceive of those kinds of parts in many ways. So we really need to let the computer do generative design and be able to do design optimization on parts. And those are technologies that we have the wherewithal to build, and we're building at Autodesk. And I think, so our platform, the Spark platform, is really designed so that any application can talk to Spark using 3MF as the file format, and then output to any device. And that can be a consumer talking to a consumer printer, can be a consumer app talking to a professional printer, or a professional industrial application talking to an industrial printer. And so what we're doing at Autodesk is we're using Spark as a way to just make it very straightforward for our applications, because we have dozens of applications across many different verticals that our customers are asking us for 3D printing capabilities across the board. It's not just manufacturing, it's not just automotive and medical and transportation and machine tool and aerospace. It's architects want to be able to actually take a design for a new concept and then print it out in a scaled model and have a high fidelity physical rendering of this new design that they have. Or people in the media and entertainment industry that are producing merchandise or producing appliances or props for their movies and that type of thing. All kinds of industries that want to do this. And so we're making it really easy across the Autodesk suite, and of course, being open and free and available, we're encouraging even many of our competitors to use Spark. Because we think if it's going to drive the 3D printing industry forward, it's going to be good for Autodesk, because our value add is in the 3D design. So I think we need to be able to have design tools that can really take advantage of the capabilities of the machines. I think the other thing that has to happen is we need to be able to have additive or 3D printed capabilities working in conjunction with more traditional manufacturing to be able to just build the kind of products of the future and really find the places where additive can really be additive and be value add in a place where the entire product doesn't have to come off of a print bed like this, right? So there's a lot of possibilities here, and yeah, I'm just excited to be a part of it. So Carl Bass, our CEO, he's a maker at heart. He's a great CEO. He's a great leader. Autodesk has really thrived under his leadership. He's pretty humble guy, but he's a super smart guy that really understands what's going on here. And he's been a huge supporter of what we're doing with Spark and the consumer and the making thing, and so he gets it. It's really about the next industrial revolution. And we saw this coming 5 years ago when we started the consumer stuff and we started working on 3D printing and making design more accessible. And education is huge. In fact, we have a whole program now called Ignite that we've just started. It's kind of a soft launch we're going to be announcing in a bigger way very soon. But it's a really interesting program where we're building a platform for educators, teachers, people that build content for instruction, content and curriculum and projects for 3D modeling on products like Tinkercad and Tinkerplay. And then on the electronics side, teaching programming, Arduino, Raspberry Pi type projects, electronics, basic electronics and programming, and taking these and really bundling curriculum and making the content along with the hardware and making that accessible. Because I don't know if you know, but like half the 3D printers that have been sold into education, across the board. I mean, education is huge, everywhere from middle school, secondary, higher levels of education, trade schools. There's a lot of printers being sold, but 90% of the printers are idle. Because it's not just a question of buying a printer and getting some materials and doing it, right? It's like we said, it's not that easy. We're building Spark because we want to fix some of the limitations and the brokenness in the workflow. With educators and with students, it's really about making it fun, making it easy, and getting them kind of hooked. The time to awesome has to be like a couple of hours or a couple of minutes in some cases, right? Because kids, especially the younger kids, I mean, it's a competition for their attention. There's just so much being thrown at them, right? I mean, it's all about video games and texting, and they're on their iPad or their phone. But if you get them into something where they can actually make something physical and they get hooked, then they're just hooked for life and they just want to do it. And these are the engineers of the future. So we're really investing in education. We think it's a huge opportunity. So yeah, I mean, education is great. It's great to see these kids really get excited about their projects. Yeah, it's been awesome. I was able to present to a packed house and a lot of questions, a lot of engagement, a lot of interest in this stuff. I don't know if I mentioned this, but when we announced Spark, it was the largest media day for Autodesk in history, And then when we did the Spark Fund, it was like something like the second. And so 3D printing is just, really engaging. And I've been watching it and kind of involved for, 20 plus years in 3D printing, and you see it just gradually growing. And then, then it like just took off. And in some ways, we just haven't really delivered on that promise, but we're getting there, and it's going to take this collaboration with a lot of companies and really moving the industry forward, but we're getting there. So yeah, today's been great. I was in Berlin this morning. I flew over, on the 7 a.m. flight, and I got here and I got to hook up with a lot of old friends, some of our partners, the Ultimaker guys, Big Rep, just a whole bunch of guys. Andre from Authentize, we got a chance to chat. And it's really great to see, all the different things coming together. The guys at Shapeways, they're doing some really cool stuff, kind of remaking the company in many ways, and that's what has to happen. I mean, it's really, this disruption that's happening is affecting all different parts of the supply chain, all different parts of the manufacturing design ecosystem. And so, people need to kind of get with the program, or they risk, kind of falling behind. Things are moving.